So folks, in this video, I'm going to illustrate segment routing with the Cisco CSR. And here's my setup right here. I've got three routers, router 1, router 2, and router 3. Each one of them's got loopbacks, and that's required for your segment routing. And we're talking Cisco CSR segment routing. What is segment routing? That's segment routing essentially, I think I did cover this before, but just to recap, MPLS VPN traditionally was dependent on BGP and IGP, OSPF or ISIS, and then LDP, Label Distribution Protocol. What has happened is with segment routing, LDP got eliminated because now segment routing uses IGP like OSPF and ISIS to distribute the labels. So that eliminates one protocol out of the core, right? So LDP used to sit here between every core router to distribute just the labels. So now it's gone because we don't need it. We are using IGP to do it. So now we got ISIS here that'll do it for you, the label distributions. On top of that, when LDP was used, each router had a table of labels. So segment routing introduced source-based routing, saying when the packet is getting sourced from a PE. So here we have a PE router, we've got a P router, provider edge and provider core routers. That's how your MPLS is implemented. Provider edge, cores, provider edge. And you can have multiple Ps, and each provider edge would have VRFs, VPN routing, forwarding, or virtual routing, forwarding, whatever you want to call it. And these are customer routes, overlapping customer routes, so on and so forth. And I've got this in the background of the entire configuration for these three routers. So when the packet comes in, instead of depending on the table to look up, for the router to look up the table to see which label is going to be used to forward, the segment routing basically says that the PE router, that's the ingress router where the packet is coming in, is going to put all the labels to say, hey, this is what you're going to do. So you don't have to look up the tables anymore. So that gets rid of the table state information. It's source-based routing. But the real criticality of understanding segment routing is that obviously it's source-based and it's using IGP instead of LDP. You can use either ISIS or OSPF, any of these two. So I'm going to be illustrating this segment routing with ISIS. And then you're going to have BGP run here and here. You don't need BGP on this guy. So that's where your VPN is going to come in. The VRF routes are going to get advertised over the core without the core learning the VRF routes. And then your VRF to VRF communication, which should happen over the core. Okay? So that's basically what segment routing is. Now let's take a look at the routers. You got three routers. I'll try to put it here so that you can see the picture as well. right, so let's see if my router 1 is fully configured. It has the loopback. It has, I'm using loopback 0 here, ignored 1 and tunnel. It's got the gigabit 2 configured at 12.0, so let me put the segments here. This is loopback 0. This is the 12 segment. .1, .2. This is the 23 segment. .3, .2, and the loopbacks. That's all we need. And then the VRFs. So we got the router 1 configured with the interfaces only. All right. Let's enable router ISIS. Config is in front of you. Router ISIS, router 1 says network 49. Always start with 49. That's already told a story in a different video on why to use 49 all the time. And then the last number on the 4th octet would be the system unique system ID. So in this case, it's going to be 1 for router 1. And that's your NSAP network number. Once you get that out of the way, for MPLS VPN, you're going to have to use metric style wide. By default, it's not enabled in Cisco CSRs. And then you got to say segment routing. Let's just do basic ISIS first. Okay. And so I'm going to skip the segment routing MPLS, segment prefix SID map, all of these commands for right now. Let's get the ISIS up first. So once you put the NSAP number, you do show run interface gig. Which one is it? 2 is where we're going. Interface gig 2, IP router, ISIS network point to point. That's just for quick convergence. You don't want DR, BDR election designated router election mechanism happening. There's only 2 routers, so you just say it's a point to point. I think that's about it, all I need to do. By default, Cisco's are L1, L2, so that's fine, because for MPLS you need the ISIS2B and L2. All right, so now the loopback, do show run interface loopback 0. Interface loopback 0, I've got some old configs, ignore all of it except for the IP, so IP router ISIS. That's it. Let's go to router 2. Config T, router ISIS, network 49. We'll keep the area same. And then the last one is going to be router 2, so unique ID, interface gig 1, IP router ISIS network point to point, interface gig 2, IP router ISIS network point to point, interface loopback 0, IP router ISIS. That's it. That's your ISIS. We're not working on MPLS yet. So that should bring your do show ISIS neighbors up for at least router 1, which it did. Do show IP route, and I am not able to see 111, and why is that? I should be able to see router 1's loopback, router ISIS. I missed this command, metric style, and it's very annoying. Metric style wide. Show IP route. There you go. You can easily forget this stuff, but anyway. So now you do see the router 1 loopback. Do ping You're good. Let's go work on router 3. Config T router ISIS net 49 222.3.3.3.4.4.4, and the last system ID is going to be unique. Interface gig, I think it's gig 2. Do show run interface gig 1 is 23, so it's interface gig 1. Interface gig 1 is IP router ISIS. And I forgot the metric style again, so I'll go back there first, later. IP router ISIS, network point-to-point. This loopback 0 IP router ISIS, interface gig 1, no, not interface gig 1, router ISIS, metric style wide. So now I should see the loopback of router 1, 2. Do show IP route. I do, and I do all the loopbacks 1 and 2. 1111, 2222. Do ping 1111. So now your ISIS is up. Now let's work on MPLS, segment routing. So segment routing basically tells you to go enable segment routing on the global. Let's start with the router 1 again. Let's check the routing table. I see 2, I see 3. I need to see the loopbacks, so I'm good. All right. Segment routing. Segment routing, MPLS. And then I go to this configuration mode called, I am already into segment routing MPLS configuration mode, so I'm following this guy on router 1 now. Connected prefixes SID map is where I go in and I tell the router that your address family IPv4 would have loopback address index. And there's various ways to configure this. I'm just using this way. That's about it. And you do the same thing on other routers. Let's do it on 3. Because 2 doesn't need, the router 2 doesn't need this thing because it doesn't need any VPN routes. So this one is skipping the P routers, but PE does need that. Segment routing, MPLS. So now I'm here on this one. Address family IPv4. 333/32 is my index, and I'm going to be using label 333 with the range 1. And I'm done here. Now let's go enable MPLS on router 1, router 2, and router 3. Let's see if I've got this stuff. Segment routing MPLS, yep. Okay, so we'll do the same here. Top side is done, so we'll move it up here. Router 1, now we're working on the ISIS router MPLS. 2 currently doesn't need anything except for this command, these 2 commands. So let's enable MPLS on router 1. Router ISIS, segment routing MPLS, segment routing prefix SID map, which we configured up there. You tell MPLS to use this label for PE to PE connection. Segment routing, prefix SID map, advertise local. Oh, routers, ISIS. Segment routing, prefix SID map, advertise local. You know, this line got wrapped up here on the second. And then, so that's my MPLS. Do show MPLS forwarding. So I've got the labels pop up with my IPs and everything. And it shouldn't have happened, or I think it should have, because we did enable do show MPLS forwarding. Nothing is there yet on 2 or 3, so 1 looks good. We got this configured, we got this configured. We'll configure BGP later, right? Because we're not into VRFs and VPNs yet. Let's get the MPLS up and running. So on router 2, all we need is segment routing MPLS. Okay, segment routing MPLS, router ISIS, segment routing MPLS. And then we do segment routing prefix. I don't think we need this command. Let's see. I did put it in, but I don't think we need it. So we'll skip it and see what happens. R3. R3 router ISIS, segment routing, MPLS. This is where I am right now. Segment routing, prefix SID, advertise local. So we'll skip this part. So now I think our MPLS is up and running. Okay. Let's go to R2 and check. Show MPLS forwarding table. So it looks good. 1 and 3 showing up with the labels that we put in. Prefix is put by the router itself, and then our assigned labels. Postfix is showing up for the loopbacks. So that is your MPLS with ISIS segment routing enabled. Now, that's basically segment routing with ISIS. Ping, I should be, if it's working, I should be able to ping router 3. And I am, trace route. And then the next step is in this video. I think I should also do MVPN. Not MVPN, but BGP VPNs, layer 3 VPNs. Here you can see the labels and it's working fine. So let's go and enable L3VPN with segment routing. All right, show VRFs. I don't have anything. So I am now on router 1 configuring my VRF. VRF definition, V1, route descriptor. Let's just say my BGP-AS would be 100. And then I'm going to say, I think it's an address family IPv4. And then I have to tell them to advertise it. So route target both. I'm going to import and export my routes. This is just for the VRF, okay? And you gotta go do this stuff. Let's just see. Just want to make sure I check my notes before I move. All right. So route target, advertise both. Both means import and export routes. We do exactly the same thing on router 3, not 2, because VRFs are existing on the PEs. Do show run view section VRF. So here's my VRF definition, address family, do the same here. VRF definition, V1, address family IPv4, route descriptor is going to be BGP AS1, route target is going to be both, do show run, view section VRF. This should look exactly the same as R1, and I think it does. Okay. Import export, and this one is an IPv4 address family, and the other one is, so I need to go and do it in my address family IPv4, route target both. Okay. Now that we got this VRF defined on router 1 as well as on router 3, VRF here, now we need to put some routes, connected routes on VRFs, exchange them and ping them without router 2 knowing it. Enable BGP as well, so all the configs is already in on the screen. Let's see if I can make it visible. Router 1. Let's bring up router BGP 100, and my neighbor is going to be 3. Remote AS is going to be 100, and I'm using the update source. This is typically for IGP. Loopback 0. Now I'm done with the global activation of neighbor. I need to go into the VPN, address family VPN v4, activate my neighbor 3. I'm on router 1, activate. Send community pops up by itself. Now I need to go into the VRF address family, IPv4 VRF v1, redistribute connected, or use a network command, whatever you want to do it. Let's put a loopback in there. Loopback, do show run interface loopback 1. I do have it. So let me interface loopback 1, VRF forwarding v1, IP address. Let's just say I want to put 11. That's fine. 255.255.255.0. Okay, now my loopback 1 is in VRF 1. Okay. Do show IP route. There is no 11. VRF v1. There you go. So this 11 should get advertised to router 3. From here all the way to router 3. Let's see. Router BGP 100. Do the same thing. Now I'm here. Let me just make sure that my loopback is not even existing. Okay, so I'll do that later. Neighbor 1111, which is router 1. Remote AS is 100. Update source is going to be loopback 0. And then I get into the address family. Address family, VPN, v4, neighbor is going to be 111, activate. And what else do I need to do? Address family, VRF. Address family, VRF. No, IPv4, VRF, v1. And then I'm going to say redistribute connected. And then I need to put an interface on VRF. Interface loopback 1. VRF forwarding v1. IP address is going to be 33. Doesn't matter what you put in, just putting it in. Could be a /32. Did I do a /32 here? It doesn't really matter, but you know, loopbacks are always /32 do show run interface loopback 1. I don't know why I did a /24. IP address 11.1.1.1. Doesn't really matter. I'm just making it symmetrical from both sides. Do show IP route VRF v1. I do see 333. Do show IP route VRF v1. I do see 1111. Can I ping it? Do ping VRF. It's easier if you go into the execution mode. Okay, ping VRF. You can use tab. Ping VRF v1. I'm ping 11. 11.1.1. Bingo. That was pretty straightforward. I'm able to ping 11 and 33 from router 1 and router 3. Show IP route VRF v1. Ping VRF v1 33. Bingo. So now 33 and 11, the two routes in VRF, is absolutely not visible on the core. So that's your MPLS VPN in action with VRF's VPN. You got, let's just recap, you got this guy here, and you had loopback 1. Loopback 1. So with this basic configuration, you got your BGP going, VPN, BGP L3VPN, and your segment routing. See, I skipped this command here, so you don't need it on the core. So on the core, all you need is this and the segment routing command here, as well as here. This one is going to come to segment routing. Right here, right here, right here. So you need segment routing here, here, and here. You only need this section on the PEs. Where your VRF is. So core routers are pretty straightforward here. Just enable segment routing, enable segment routing on the IIS level. You don't need this command. You need it on PE. And that's it. You got this thing here, you got this thing here, your BGP, global, VPN, VRF. Again, the VRF is facing, if you are not very familiar with MPLS VPN3, it's initially very confusing, but you know, VRF is always going to be facing the CE. So if I have to draw a picture, I'm going to draw a nice picture. The customer edge router CE comes in, advertising routes through static or BGP to the PE router. This PE router is enabled with VRF on this interface for this customer, whatever that customer is. Let's say customer 1. So this is going to be customer VRF C1. And P talks to P, PE talks to P, P talks to PE. So this is customer site 1, and this is same customer site 2, site 1. Site 2, you're going to put the same VRF. I don't think the name needs to be the same, but for symmetrical reasons, customer VRF. This interface is going to be on a VRF. C1, he's going to advertise routes through BGP or statics or whatever he's going to learn. So here's BGP going on. Here's BGP going on. PEPE, BGP, no BGP here, just here and here, iBGP. You learn all the customer routes and put it in a VRF. It goes to the other site through BGP and VPN. And then if you have second customer, you put a second interface, VRF C2, another customer CE router, advertise his route. So this could be overlapping routes, but it will still coming into different VRFs. So MPLS VPN, L3VPN. With segment routing, with ISIS. Hope this helps.